Wonderful day to you, family. Wonderful day to you, family. Before I say this is Young Entrepreneur Africa, which I believe I have already said, I want to apologize for the inconvenience that I caused you on the day before yesterday when I posted that we are going to be hosting the second podcast episode on Facebook live. And trust me, it was supposed to be done live, and that was the plan, but unfortunately we had power shortages with ZSI issue, and I know a lot of Zimbabweans, you can all relate. Especially at our side at Chi-Town, we are experiencing a sub-load shedding, and I believe that the municipality is working on it and it's still quite okay. So recapping back to the issue, wonderful day to you all. This is Young Entrepreneur Africa. I have come today with the second episode of the thinkPodcast. And remember that when we posted on all our social media platforms, it was titled Questions That Are Never Asked. Now today I come in the shoes of my mentor, Vusi Tembekwayo, with a vision that I think that is going to empower and activate the hidden potential within the African soil and African capabilities. And now the only problem that I've discovered, I want you to get me right here. I believe that it's time for a change. I believe that it's time whereby Africa evolves from this stage of intellectual brilliance and cultivate it more into a practical brilliance, economical brilliance. What do I mean? I think for the past 300 to 400 years, the battle that the African continent was fighting was to prove eloquence in intellectuality and to compete with our fellow counterparts, the white community, unfortunately, to prove that we also too can learn as fast as they are, and we also can speak as fluent as they are. And that has been quite a wonderful journey. I think if we can all relate to the era of Robert Gabriel Mugabe, we would understand that he emphasized more and invested more in knowledge, because he believed that without intellectuality and understanding the basics of communication, the basics of fundamental knowledge that is really required, it was going to be difficult for Africans to cope up with some of the jargon and some of the systems that the white community had already set up. So that is quite been, I believe that our leaders have managed so well to drill us into this zone of intellectual brilliance. But now in this information age, whereby we are in an AI advanced age and the information age is growing so rapidly, I hardly believe that it's now time for another revolution in the African continent to arise, and that is the practical or the economical part of the African revolution. And what I mean by that is that I've discovered that we've grown so much intellectual to the level that even the whites can admit, or even the other communities can admit, that even when it comes to English, we can speak better than them, we can learn more faster than them, our IQ is more higher than them. But the only problem that we have is transplanting or transporting that reality into making it manifest. How can I take this theory and manifest it in a practical phase? How can I take this vision? Let's take, for instance, I'm talking, if a person is an architect, you can imagine the building that you want to build. But in the African continent, it's all about the knowledge, but it's not about the practical part. That is an unfortunate thing that I've discovered, and I have to be honest here. The only problem is you can know so much about the materials that these buildings can be used to build, but the step to engage into making those raw materials, laying those foundations and structures, and building that elegant building, that Dubai type of buildings, we have not yet tapped onto that reality. So that is the reason why Young Entrepreneur Africa has come today with the theme, Questions That Are Never Asked. And I think that for long we have been so overzealous about information and ideas that really don't matter no more. They mattered when our leaders, I'm talking of Thomas Sankara, I'm talking of Julius Nyerere, I'm talking of Robert Gabriel Mugabe, I'm talking of Nelson Mandela, I'm talking of, even in the Americas, I'm talking of Martin Luther King, I'm talking of Malcolm X, I'm talking of Muammar Gaddafi. Their age was an information age whereby we needed to have the basis of knowledge, understanding arithmetic, understanding language, understanding all these basics, and evolve later into this, applying that theory that we all have, that we have all read at school, we have all read, all researched. We have AI right now, we are researching, and all these things that we are doing. We now want to move in a phase, and Africa, hear me very well, I've desired for you, Africa. We now need to evolve into a phase whereby we make our knowledge come to reality. So questions that are never asked. If you ask yourself right now, what is a bank? Probably the definition that you're going to give me is the definition that we were taught at school. And I've discovered one thing about the curriculum. The curriculum can never teach you how to make money. The curriculum can never teach you how to be an independent business person in life. And I believe that in our educational sector, this is one of the compromises that needs to be done. Because the reason why African economies are declining is because we are having less and less entrepreneurs and more employees. And that's one of the most brutal challenges that we've been facing. So I asked myself a question earlier on, and I asked myself, what is a bank? Yes, I've been dealing with bank. I'm affiliated with FBC as a holder of a MasterCard, a credit card, and a member of the Building Society. But I asked myself, what is a bank? How is the money that we are using generated? Where can we find it? Not in circles, like the source from where it is produced. How can we access that source? These are questions that have never been asked. Questions that are not being asked in the African society. You want to start a business. You want capital. You want to build a building. You want to buy a building. You want money. Where is that money coming from? You have a bank card. Obviously we have banks. But how is that money generated? This is question number 1. We're going on to question number 2. I'm tired of Africans. We sit down time and time again, discussing of all the progress, all the ideas, the brilliance that we have, all the competitiveness that we have, but we fail to structure out. Have you ever realized that for the past decade, Africa has been evolving into more of an ideological culture whereby we know too much and we act less? A scenario whereby we know too much, but in action we are less. We don't act. We are feeding ourselves brains, but we forget even to tell ourselves that the brain thinks and regenerates, but the hands are the ones that works. We have so many architects in Africa, but while we have the most poorest infrastructure in the world, which means there is a level whereby we have to subside our ego and understand that we now need people who are humble enough to assemble themselves and say, we now want to build Africa. And Africa is to be built by us. Zimbabwe is to be built by us. We are tired of more service businesses. The people that are doing business right now in Zimbabwe, I wouldn't like to mention the name of any company for discriminatory purposes, but have you ever realized that around 45% of the companies that are growing, the growing companies right now, or the emerging companies, are service companies in Zimbabwe? They are companies offering services. And those who have really started infrastructural development and construction, I used to work in the construction industry. One time I was contracted by another company that I used to work for when things were quite hard. And I discovered that even the infrastructure that we are building, be it from houses to buildings, very poor infrastructure. If we don't have people, we have a mindset that we want to develop Africa, and we need to do it quality, and we need to rededicate ourselves, our time, even if it is money. Now, the only problem that I've discovered is that many African entrepreneurs, they are doing it for money, but not for the development of the continent. That's why we are seeing more and more corruption, that one person can sit and gobble all the profits, and others are suffering in the same office. A company can open up 3-4 months, there is no pay. I believe in financial evaluation, whereby if you start your company, I wouldn't rather encourage a payment system that was endorsed 1780, something there, because we are now living in an age where information is moving more faster than it has ever been moving before. So I believe that one thing that needs to be revolutionized is our payment system. We don't have to abide by salaries anymore. Number one. Number two, still on that, I also believe that what most companies are not doing that they should be doing is what has made so many young Africans lazy and poor, and has deteriorated their mindset and their goal, shifting their focus to how they are supposed to develop Africa as a continent that is backslidden, and putting their focus on just money. What I believe is this: we have to reach a point whereby we become honest with ourselves that if we don't take up this show, surely forever and for eternity the odds are always to be against us. These are questions that are never asked. Why do we know so much and act less? Why do we still have the same? If we can check from the midpoint Central African Republic, going back to the southern of Africa, we will discover that our infrastructure is almost the same. Why is that so? Because we have failed to have focused and more dedicated people in regrounding Africa and breeding it into the giant that it's supposed to be. And we've seen a rise of more and more aggressive and corrupt business owners, CEOs, corrupt managers, corrupt heads of state, and all these kind of things. And I think that it is now time that Africa needs to reunite, and we work on reconstructing our continent. It's important to do safe business, but by the state in which most of the African countries is in right now, I wouldn't advise anyone to focus more on safe businesses. We need real solid businesses like reconstruction of the African continent. It's as simple as that. And as young entrepreneur Africa, I'm hosting a campaign. I'm looking for 50 young entrepreneur mindset developers that are ready to partner in this initiative, whereby we ask ourselves, what is it that has made Dubai to be what it is? That is needed fundamentally for Africa to also become like Dubai, for Africa to also supersede the United States. What are the fundamentals? What knowledge are we missing? It's not about opening a company. What solution are you providing to the community, to the society? We are seeing more of companies that are offering internal services and perhaps some most external services. But we are seeing less companies that are developing, that will come and say, in this CBD, we want to get rid of all the old steel and this old steel design. We want to refurbish this design. We have to present this alloy in this type of shape. We have less companies that come and say, in Zimbabwe, we need straight and perfect roads, and we want to remake the Harare CBD. We are seeing less and less of companies that should be doing real development. And we are seeing a rise of more and more companies that are offering services. Why? Because our perception is focused more on money rather than on Africa's development. And that has been one of the core and fundamental problems that we've encountered and suffered as the African continent. These are questions that are never asked. What are we doing as a continent to develop our own continent? Because if we're doing something valuable, why is it that when a person gets a green light here in Africa, they move out and go to the US, they go to the UK, they go to Canada, they go to all these states. What is it about Africa that we are failing to make on our own and to produce on our own? What is the knowledge that we are missing that we are not able to recapitalize it and produce our own ideas, manifest our own results, build our own value? I was talking to a friend, I think one time, then I asked him this question, and I told him that if 1 kg of gold, 1 kilogram of gold in the United States of America is charged at perhaps, let's say, $77,000, and that same kg of gold, if I take it here in Africa, in Zimbabwe, and I charge it for $1 million, what is the hindering factor that can actually come and stand out that you have charged too much? And the one that is coming with that condemnation that I've charged too much, on what basis are you standing? Because according to my perception, I'm seeing this block of gold and I'm saying, this should be costing around $1 million. And you're seeing the same block of gold and you are suggesting that it should be costing around $70,000. So I think that it's time whereby Africa, we come together and realize that there are certain principles that we need to be independent on. There are certain items that we need to put our own value. Trust me, it's one of the most fundamental things that I think Africa should be working on right now. How to build our own value. What are we doing as a continent to build our own value? We are seeing more and more. If you check, 65% of the construction companies in the Western countries, 65%, you see at least a third of black workers there that have migrated from Africa. They are in Australia. They are developing the nations of other people. Yet here in Zimbabwe, we don't have committees that are rising to gather up and say, look, in Australia they are putting underground electricity. We also need that in new locations that are developing in Zimbabwe, that are developing in Africa. Why can't we go back and form a community and start working on building that same technology and initiative for the betterment of Africa tomorrow? We are not seeing that. Why is it that banks here in Zimbabwe, they make it hard for an entrepreneur that is trying to rise, asking for capital? They make it hard for that person to access, number one, the credit card, number two, the loan, number three, the credit itself. These are questions that are never asked. We are seeing less and less of entrepreneurs. Why? Because Africa, we have a spirit of subjugating and suppressing ourselves instead of uplifting and rising ourselves. We should be seeing more and more activities from banks supporting and partnering with entrepreneurial initiatives, individuals that are trying to build business, so that our stock market here in Zimbabwe can be as competitive as possible, in Africa as competitive as possible. And we have to create our own value. Why are we not also seeing meme coins? Why are we not also seeing crypto coins rising here from Africa? It's because we have tapped into the dimension and the realms of the perceptions and the system that has been set by our fellow counterparts, unfortunately, and that has been one of the main problems, that we are still riding on their back. When are we going to climb down from their back and begin to develop our own back system? Questions that are never asked. This is Young Entrepreneur Africa, and I've come with a concern today. These are questions that are never asked. Remember, I'm running a campaign. Number one, I'm hiring a research and development team. I need 2 young people for research and development, and we are hiring under the OCBM, Open Concept Business Model. Don't look for salaries, aim for development. Because even I myself, there is no salary that I'm getting. But my hope and future is to build Africa to be the best, to build Zimbabwe to be the best. I'm looking for 50 real developers, architects, visionaries. I'm looking for people who have a mindset that sees beyond what you're already seeing right now. And with that being said, this has been wonderful. The second podcast, the Think Podcast, questions that are never asked. I want to thank you. Have a good day, Faye.